The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. Wealth Builders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wealth Builders Membership, a proven step-by-step process that helps you achieve financial security within 2 to 3 years. To find out more, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership. Welcome to this week's episode of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Ciao, Cristiano.
Hey.
Come va?
How was your trip to Italy, Kevin?
I was good. I was really tired after the burning the midnight whatevers. Midnight oil was truly bruleed, and getting all the budget guides ready and doing some sort of immediate post-budget webinars live, which is testing. So I took a break to Italy and a bit of Lake Garda for a bit of relaxation and a bit of Verona. And what light from yon window breaks, he says. Juliet's balcony, what a load of rubbish.
Glad you had it.
As a tourist trap for sure. Anyway, we're going to talk about not tourist traps, but tax traps today, Chris.
Indeed. Well, it's been 2 weeks, hasn't it, since the budget, and there were so many rumours flying around. And what did you make of the big speech then, Kevin?
Well, as you say, the rumours were flying around, and as you know, I don't believe in taking action on rumours. And the big rumour is always the tax-free cash on pensions, which wasn't touched, of course. I think when you talk about the speech, the speech was interesting, but I think to me it was sort of a budget of threes, really. I've never seen a budget so late in the year. And I couldn't quite work out, other than they needed the time to tax us to the hilt. But what was interesting for me, it felt a little bit like, did she deliberately choose it too far away from Halloween so it wouldn't be compared to some sort of Halloween ghoulish movie, which it could have been? You can see the headlines being written, the fiendish taxes and the fiendish finances from the Wicked Witch of Whitehall. It could have been that. It could have been sort of a Christmas pantomime, another Wicked Witch. Oh, no, she's behind you. But it could have been that. It wasn't that, but it was a comedy, though.
There was lots of howling going on from the benches, wasn't there?
Well, there was a lot of howling. And it wasn't an uplifting budget for sure, but the comedy came really from the fact that I've never seen the OBR release the data before the budget. So everybody had read the budget before she read it. And it was like a comedy watching her reading her text. You could see the phone, and obviously it didn't ring, but you could see the phone. And then she was giving daggers to somebody or other. And then she realized, of course, that the OBR had published the record, and now somebody's head has rolled on that one. Yeah, and Kemi Badenoch had obviously had plenty of time to read it, and she went to town. And I think, she was the horror story. I thought she was a bit harsh, really. But so in terms of the speech and the whole process of the speech and that whole kind of budget, and I commend this budget to the House, all of that stuff was really a comedy. And, so she's the Grinch that stole Christmas. Well, she's the Rach that stole a lot of money from us. And because she was wedded to the three, so there's a budget of threes, the threes, in terms of what she couldn't change the rate of income tax, the rate of VAT, and the rate of national insurance for workers. So what did we get? We got a smorgasbord that we had to pick through like a pick and mix when you go to the movies and you pick all those little things to put in your bag, and then you've got to sort them out. And invariably you get some things that you like and some things you don't like any box of sweets. What's your favourite in a box, and what do you hate in your quality street or your chockies? What do you like?
I like the purple ones. I think that the hazelnut or the caramel ones,
they'd
be my faves. Yeah.
Yeah.
But talking of threes, perhaps what we can do just to simplify things today. No, we're having a bit of fun because it's not the most interesting of topics. For all of our keen wealth builders, we could probably break it down into a few of the key, announcements for business owners.
Now, Chris.
Well, let's look at the business owners, the property investors, and then we can include pensions and investments as well, I reckon.
Well, there are always a few headlines, aren't there, really? But, if you look at, I felt bashed as an older business owner, okay? So why was I bashed? Well, first of all, most business owners, when they're in control of their business, and I mean that in the loosest sense of the word, control, they've got some flexibilities, haven't they, to be able to choose salary versus dividend and so on. That's generally how business owners pay. But the dividend charge went up. So in other words, you take dividends, you get charged an extra 2p or 2% on that. So you've now got two higher rates of dividend charge. They didn't somehow add the 2% to the highest dividend charge, which still remains at 39 and something. They're all in that kind of from 8 to 10 point, and then so the rates were odd. I think they're just trying to find as many ways as possible to tax different people. And of course, that 2% tax charge also got applied to the wider population on savings and the property owners who got taxed an extra 2% on any income they've got. So how we like to focus on recurring income? It seems like every time there's a recurring income, there's an extra tax charge on it.
I did notice that, yeah. But corporation tax stays unchanged. It wasn't too long that was increased anyway, was it?
Well, it wasn't really. The big budget bashing for my first budget was the increase in national insurance charges for employers, the reduction in the rate at which national insurance kicked in. And of course, they introduced the higher minimum wage, which will affect some business owners, particularly those, who are employing people at that sort of a level, which would automatically increase their cost. But the higher divvy charge was a big one for me. I think another one, we've been talking about business owners always need an exit. And in 2026, they announced in the previous budget that if you were to pass on your business, not sell your business. I'll come on to the selling of a business in a minute. If you were to pass on your business, then because you die and you want to pass it on to your kids, then they'd already introduced the business protection brief, BPR, that used to be unlimited, right? You could, if you pass on your business, it was unlimited what you could pass it on for. It was received by your children, next of kin as a going concern. Now it's £1 million maximum with 50% on anything over £1 million. So if you sell your business for £2 million or your business worth £2 million rather, keep getting myself in there because I've got, the anxiety over the selling, right? Because as an older businessman, you want to sell or you want to think about that at some point, just have it in your locker. So anyway, the BPR is limited now to £1 million and then 20% tax, which is an IHT tax for the excess. One good thing about that, though, is it never used to be available or transferable to a spouse. So you know how on the inheritance tax, you've got 325 nil rate band and the 175, and it's transferable to a spouse. So that's where you've got 500 plus 500 giving £1 million for a couple. You didn't have that with BPR, but now you do. So thankfully, it's a good thing. It's one of the three good things that I saw.
A few glimmers of light that were hidden away in there.
One or two. The other business owner bad thing was the EOT, which is an employee ownership trust. And many business owners we know, Chris, don't want to sell their business to an acquirer. They want to essentially migrate it or gently pass it into the stewardship of their team, their staff. And I like the concept of stewardship because it encourages shared principles, shared values, shared ownership. And I like that. So an EOT would definitely be something that would be, on the rise to many older business owners. And that was completely IHT free until now. And it came in immediately. 50%. So it's still a good relief. It's a capital gains tax, so it's still a decent tax relief. 50% of the tax ordinarily would be paid. But overnight, 50% cut means you had to, if you didn't get that one in time, you're going to be really, you probably would have paid quite a lot of money to get your EOT, and if you were banking on getting all the proceeds out tax-free and now you're not, then that's a challenge, I think, for some.
You just mentioned time there. And of course, there's different time frames from when some of these are going to kick in. And we've actually got a guide, which if you would like to download, you can head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/budget-guide. I'll put the link in the show notes, because it may be that you need to do some planning. There will be, certain months or maybe a couple of years. And if it's, buying machinery, if you're a business owner, certain reliefs that will be changing. So yeah, do be aware of the timeframes, because that could make all the difference.
Yeah, it does. And you originally, when she sort of gave her views about what her intentions were, it was about stability, because it's instability and insecurity that rocks markets, for example. So she said, I'll come with one budget, which will be my £40 billion budget, and I won't ask for any more money. And the second budget was a £26 billion budget. So is she going to come back? But there were so many measures, some for immediate, some for 26, some for 27, some for 28, some for 29. It's like she's staggering it in a very unusual way that I've never, ever seen before, ever. So many changes that have been announced that are coming. And one of those that really cheesed me off, not massive, but it's still a cheeser, is the mileage charge on electric cars. And you and I both drive electric cars, don't we? We don't want to be, on the one hand, being incentivized to be good for society and I suppose, good for the world in terms of the carbon footprint, and then be taxed on the other hand. Look, I understand it. It's 3p a mile. So, I don't know how many miles you do, but if a typical driver drives 8,000 miles, another 250 quid a year, well, it's neither here nor there, but it's still a confusing one, because on the other hand, they're giving incentives to buy, these vehicles. So yeah, to me, it was like a confusing budget. It didn't really quite give me a real strong sense of anything other than, as I say, a pick and mix, because she'd hemmed herself in by those three mainstays. Good thing on pensions, though. Yeah, the state pension triple lock was still in there, so that increased the pension for those who are eligible 4.8%. I would encourage everybody to get a state pension forecast, though. I'm sure you can put a link in the notes for people to do that, because you want to know whether or not you're going to need to top up your national insurance contributions. So, if you do the forecast, it will tell you what you're in line for. We had that daft one, another comedy. Did you hear that one? So the current state pension, things like 12,527 or something. If you have to know exactly what the state pension is, you got the wrong plan, right? But 12,500 and something, or 12,700 something. But the actual allowance before you pay tax is 12.5. So you're going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of pensioners getting a teeny tiny bit of tax. Well, that was the plan, but they've removed that now. They said, we're not going to tax people who've just got a state pension. But I'm sure those people who are listening to this podcast, Chris, will not be the sort of people who are just going to get their income from a state pension. If so, tune in elsewhere.
So other things related to pensions, salary sacrifice restriction.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. A twist on that one as well for you. So first of all, what is salary sacrifice? Well, it's a way for typically employed people to give up some of their salary as part of a contractual change. You agree it with your employer, you're going to change the contract. So your contractual change says, instead of receiving this sum that we've agreed as a salary, I'm going to sacrifice that salary contractually, and I want you as my employer to pay that into my pension. And because the employer, therefore, wasn't going to pay employers' national insurance on that portion, So say it was 10 grand salary sacrifice, the employer would pay, what's it, 15.8, so 1,500 quid more in tax in NI. They would, if they agreed, and not every employer did agree, but most did, then will you pay that 1,500 quid into my pension? Because it's neutral to you, but it's positively beneficial for me. And the employers would do that. Now they've capped that at 2 grand. 2 grand. That's going to mess up employed people more than business owners. And that's in 2029, I think. So you've got time to work that one through. But business owners don't have that problem because, as I mentioned, if you're a business owner, whatever salary you choose to have is not sacrificed. So if you put money into your pension, it's a contribution. So you get full tax and national insurance concessions, which is an important thing to say, Chris, that when you're taxed more, you've got to be really tuned in to the tax privileges that are out there. As one loophole closes, you've got to peer in to where the tax breaks are and maximize those tax breaks. So for the business owners, you've still got 60 grand you can pay in each year. So lean in and pay those pension contributions because you're still getting corporation tax back, tax-free growth. Yes, there's some IHT potentially to pay, but if you read the IHT pension guide, there are at least 4 ways you can use an SSAS to help you mitigate the inheritance tax. So I still think there's big tax benefits to be had because they're cutting back for the under 65s. These are for investors now, the cash ISA.
So that's been cut now to 12,000 for the cash ISA, right? Well, combined value of 20.
Yeah, and look, the reason for that is there's a thing, I can't remember the exact figure, like 300 billion or something, a huge sum of money in ISAs that they want to see more investing. Maybe this is the argument where the growth might come from. Restrict people of your age to 12 grand for cash, so it forces you to invest more money if you want your 20 grand ISA allowance, to put more of that money into the markets, which is for investing. But will that go to UK markets? Will that go to US markets? Who knows? We don't know what will happen. It's a very interesting one. But if you're over 65, then you can still do your 20,000. So I think there's a little bit of help for the older people, but very little else. Other than, if you're older, you got your state pension, triple lock, you got your 20 grand. I think that's it for the older folks. Because if you earn any savings other than your ISA, you're going to pay an extra 2% on them. So that also means people who've got investment bonds, with their insurance companies and so on, because that's taxed the same way as income, but the fund pays it, so that's going to pay 2% more in tax as well. I don't think people know that they've got investment bonds. So I know we're getting a bit technical, but pretty much everywhere you look, the tax privileged investments are being restricted. So it's only really the 20 grand ISA. Even pensions I still think good value for money because you want to build the money up, and the IHT, as I say, is you can deal with it, especially if you've got a good enough time, a long enough time to plan.
I guess the comment from some people now, Kevin, if pensions are going to be included in your estate, are pensions still, as good a bet as perhaps they used to?
Yeah, it's a good question, Chris. And people sometimes say to me that, but I think if you truly understand the impact of the value of tax relief coming in and tax-free growth for decades, there's no inheritance tax to pay between spouses. And as I say, if you look at SSAS in particular, which has got the pooling, people combining their money together, which is a great thing for family planning in terms of family legacy planning. You've got the earmarking, you can cascade money between one member of a family and another because you can, anyone in the family over 18 basically can become part of that. And you've got the loan back facility, which allows you to lend up to 50% of your pension to your company, and your company could employ your children, or indeed you could have your children as directors. So the value of that leads the pension, and goes into a company owned by your children, which therefore means you're bypassing the inheritance position. And in fact, for those people who've got grown-up children or even children over 16, you could probably employ some of them. I mean, we've got young people these days super smart with AI, with all sorts of tech. So if you've got a business, you could employ, I think one member we were talking to is employing their daughter for 200 quid a month, 2.5 grand a year, reasonable. I think she was 14, doing a bit of social media for the family, and that's tax deductible. So it bypasses IHT as well, because you can even pay that as a pension contribution. So there's so many ways that if you're paying attention and getting good guidance, there are so many ways to walk through this elegantly. What most people will do, though, in my experience, Chris, is they'll get overwhelmed by the smorgasbord. They'll get overwhelmed by the rules. They get overwhelmed by the rumors and what's going on, and they won't take the small action every month that we would like them to take. So in the guide, or certainly the Pensions and Inheritance Tax Guide,
now available,
is available. We've given 4 or 5 things people can do, rather than, like, how many things have we just talked about there? I don't know, 30 individual items in a budget. You shouldn't have 30 things to unpick in a budget. It should be a few key headlines so everybody understands what to do and can make a plan. But when you got 30 things, it's like trying to draw all the threads together and you don't know how it affects your tax position, your assets, your long-term plan, your children. You know, what year is it coming in and what's yeah, it's a mess. So the best thing to do is get the guide, just get clear and have a conversation with someone, us or somebody else you trust, and say, right, here's my situation. What are the steps I should take given this situation, on a piece of paper? And you spend a lot of time creating the IHT calculator so people could self-check whether or not there's any inheritance tax to pay. We can't really create a guide for the whole of the budget. That would be too complicated, wouldn't it? To try and create a solution that combined 30 things crisscrossing. I can do it in my brain, but I can't do it on a calculator. It would take, maybe I could employ my son or daughter to do that, Chris.
I don't think they do it for £200 a month, would they?
No, they would not, no.
Okay.
Maybe you could do it, Chris.
So I guess to summarize, really, we often talk about principles, don't we, at Wealth Builders? And essentially, you still want to be diversified across as many of the 7 pillars of wealth as you can. And you want to increase your focus on recurring income from controllable sources and using tax advantage structures like a SSAS, looking at the different ways that you can protect your wealth, mitigate your tax, all the things that we are here to help you with. So do reach out. If any of these changes are concerning you or leaving you with more questions, head to Wealth Builders website. You'll see a big red button, book a discovery call. Feel free to do that and just have a chat with us. We've got lots of tools, as we've mentioned. I'll link to those. The calculator, you can use that for free. And the guides that we've mentioned as well, you can download those for free so you can understand things in more detail.
And here's the thing, Chris, right? If you get a good relationship with someone you can trust, and certainly I would hold ourselves out in high regard, not self-servingly, but just because we obsess about doing good work, and we don't. The big thing that we know is true, and I think you summarise it quite nicely. Creating controllable income, and because life is very uncertain, there's so many things you can't control. But if you can control a few things, one of those would be pay attention to the recurring income that's leaving your life. Pay attention to your tax. Pay attention to your, if you're in business, your corporation tax. Pay attention to the fees that you're paying when you're investing money to try and build your wealth. Pay attention to the cost of your debt. Pay attention to just 2 or 3 things during the course of a year, which anybody could do. And then it gives you at least a sense of a little bit more. Because if you pay attention, you're trying to get in control. So Switch it round if you can. So not just save money, but then turn those savings you make or those benefits you make and turn them into recurring income. So you're creating certainty in a world that's fundamentally becoming less and less certain. And that would be my parting theme, create certainty. And from our perspective, we changed the paradigm on thinking from retirement planning to wealth planning, from hoping for the best to planning and getting recurring income. And whenever we do work, Chris, and this is important to say out loud, we don't work on billable hours. We don't work like lawyers on hourly rates. We work on results and we get results. And if we don't get the results, we don't get paid. So we're happy that when anybody engages with us, they make more money than we charge. And we do that, or we can carry on working with them until we do make that money for them. So there's nothing to lose by having a chat, and then we'll show you how much money you can either make, save, or just get more control in a life where, geez, with the budgets keeps going like this, it's going to be like a smorgasbord every year. I don't know how to do another one, Chris. It did my head in this one.
Well, that's right. And there's no better time of year, is there, than as we lead up to Christmas to get that clarity and to have someone there as a guide that you can speak to. So, do reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And feel free to share this episode. If there's been any nuggets you think somebody else would like to hear, hit the share button, send it to them. And don't forget, click the links in the show notes to download all of those guides and access to the inheritance tax calculator.
Yeah, and by the way, just a quickie, because there was one thing, Chris, I didn't mention, but I'll mention it now, because I think, it was definitely wanting to be a change to be made in legislation, which, as you remember, I talked to you a little while ago about it's the executors of somebody's will who's got the responsibility to collect all the information, to do a report to HMRC, pay the inheritance tax before they can distribute the money to the family. And the time frame for paying IHT, inheritance tax, 6 months. And we said in a previous podcast, didn't we? There's no way the insurance companies are going to be able to get the information that's known, for the executors to find all the pensions that are unknown. And we know this ourselves because we encourage our members to find their lost pensions, and to do all that in 6 months can't be done. They've changed it to 15 months. Not to pay the tax, only on the pension piece. So, there are some things, and you've got to be aware of that. So we'll write a guide probably in January. I just need a breather for executors so that they can discharge their job well and feel confident in being able to do that. So if you listening out there and you think, I'd love, Kevin, if you'd write a guide on this, a subject that's dear to your heart, something that's always confusing you, then, I'll take that under advisement. And because you see, every time I write a guide, I have a holiday. So I'll have to have another holiday soon.
Why not? Okay, that's a nice place for us to end. And we'll be back next week. And that will be our final episode before Christmas, where we'll take a little break and then we will rejoin in the new year. So do join us for that. And Kevin will be back same time, same place next week.
Yes, and we'll be meeting each other in London for a bit of a Christmas special as well, won't we? Until then, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the WealthBuilders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.